The courtroom doors didn't just open, they exploded inward as the sheriff's son kicked his way through, swagger spilling in before he did. Heads snapped toward him. He strutted down the aisle, chin high, ego higher. "I have the power to remove every single one of you," he announced, voice dripping entitlement like oil. Then he faced the bench, smirk stretching wider. "And Judge Judy, you're fired." The room gasped. Audience, bailiff, even the cameras seemed to flinch. But 12 seconds later, his arrogance drained from his face, drop by drop. Because when Judge Judy finally replied, he realized he hadn't just crossed a line, he detonated it. "But before we jump in, tell me, where are you watching from? And don't forget to hit that subscribe button." The words hadn't just left his mouth, they detonated. A tremor rippled through the courtroom as if the arrogance itself had mass. Judge Judy didn't move, didn't blink. She simply looked at him. The sheriff's son stood in the center aisle as if it were a throne room, and he'd just ascended. His chest rose with a confidence that wasn't earned, only inherited. The door behind him was still vibrating from the force of his entrance, dust drifting from the hinges like the aftermath of a controlled explosion. For a moment, time felt suspended in the courtroom air, thick, electrified, waiting for the fallout. His smirk lingered, an expression plastered on his face like he'd rehearsed it in a mirror. "You're fired," he'd said with the gleeful precision of a child knocking over someone else's sandcastle. He expected chaos or fear, or at the very least, obedience. What he got instead was silence. Judge Judy lifted her chin 1 degree. A tiny shift, but in the language of power, it was seismic. Her eyes didn't flare, didn't harden, they cooled, frost forming where fire should have been, the kind of silence that makes even the air step back. The cameras refocused, lenses whirring softly, catching every microsecond of his unraveling confidence. The bailiff, arms crossed, watched the boy like he'd seen this breed before, performers who mistake volume for authority. Judy's gaze held him, not with anger, but with assessment, the kind that dissects a person before they realize they're being autopsied. Her hands rested lightly on the bench, posture relaxed, expression unreadable. But every viewer, every audience member, every trembling person who had ever crossed her courtroom knew what that silence meant. It was the inhale before a verdict. The sheriff's son shifted, his swagger wobbling just enough to notice. He straightened his jacket, cleared his throat, looked around like someone might step in and clap for him, reassure him he'd nailed his performance. No one did. Finally, Judge Judy spoke, and her voice was soft, too soft. "State your authority," she said. No heat, no sarcasm, just an instruction. But the weight of that instruction pressed on him like 1,000 pounds of reality. His eyes flicked to the audience, then to the cameras, as if searching for a line, a script, anything to cling to. My father, he runs this county," he replied, trying to stitch swagger back into his words. "So that means I can remove anyone who disrespects him." A slow blink from Judy. "And you believe that includes me?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Not a word. Not a sound, just a breath that betrayed the first crack in his armor. The courtroom leaned forward. Even he felt it, that moment when the floor stops supporting you and begins to tilt. Judge Judy leaned in a fraction, eyes narrowing with surgical precision. "Then let's start," she said. "Explain exactly why you believe you have the power to fire a judge." The question hit him, and he realized he didn't have an answer. The cameras zoomed in, catching the exact moment the sheriff's son realized the room wasn't bending to him. Privilege had carried him into the courtroom, but it wasn't carrying him through this moment. Judge Judy's question still hovered in the air, sharp enough to cut through his thinning confidence. "Explain exactly why you believe you have the power to fire a judge," the sheriff's son swallowed. The arrogance that carried him through the doors now teetered, searching for footing that simply wasn't there. His eyes darted to the audience again, maybe for approval, maybe for rescue, but all he found were raised brows, judgment, and a few half-hidden smirks. I told you," he stammered, voice wobbling as he tried to rebuild the swagger. "My father runs this county." Judy didn't blink. "Your father is the sheriff. He enforces the law. He does not create it, and he certainly does not supervise the judiciary." Her tone wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, just decisive. A scalpel, not a hammer. The boy shifted, clearly unprepared for resistance. "Well, he controls the department and he said, 'Your father,'" Judy interrupted, "does not control me." The audience murmured, a low hum rolling through the room like distant thunder. Even the bailiff leaned in a little, sensing the shift, power returning to where it belonged. The sheriff's son squared his shoulders, grabbing the last tattered pieces of ego. "Look, Judge Judy, I don't need a lecture on how the system works. I know my rights." Judy raised an eyebrow. "You know your rights, but do you know your case? Start with that. Why are you here today?" The question struck him harder than he expected. His lips parted, but hesitation crept in. He didn't know. Or maybe he didn't care enough to learn. The complainant flinched as Judy's eyes shifted to her. She hadn't spoken yet, but her posture told a story of exhaustion and fear she'd been carrying long before this hearing. Judy gestured toward her. "Step forward, please." The sheriff's son scoffed. "Oh, come on, she's exaggerating. I shouldn't even be here." "This is a waste of everyone's time," Judy's voice hardened. "The only thing being wasted is patience, not time." The cameras captured everything: the sheriff's son's rising irritation, Judy's unwavering calm, the complainant's trembling hands as she approached the bench. "Tell me," Judy said gently, addressing the woman, "what brings you here?" The woman swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. He vandalized my business, Your Honor." A pin could have dropped and echoed. The boy barked in protest. "That's not how it happened." Judy held up a hand. "You'll speak when I ask you to." His jaw tightened. He wasn't used to being silenced. The complainant continued, her voice gaining strength. He said I owed him respect, that everyone did." Judy turned back to the sheriff's son, her gaze steady. "Is that what you believe?" His mouth twitched, caught between defiance and fear. Judy leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing. "Because if that is the case, we're going to need more than words." She tapped the bench. "Bring forward the photographs and the receipts." The sheriff's son froze. The photographs hadn't even reached the bench when the complainant's breath hitched. Her hands trembled, not from weakness, but from finally being seen. The sheriff's son rolled his eyes until the first image surfaced. Judge Judy lifted the glossy photo slowly, letting the camera catch the ruin in full detail. Shattered signage, splintered wood, spray paint streaked with a message meant to intimidate rather than vandalize. The audience murmured, quiet, sympathetic, horrified. Judy turned the photo toward the defendant. "Did you do this?" he scoffed, leaning back in his chair. Look, it wasn't that bad. She's exaggerating. It's just business decor. Free remodel, honestly." His smirk faltered when Judy didn't return even a flicker of amusement. The complainant swallowed hard, stepping closer. "You didn't just break my sign," she whispered. "You destroyed my busiest weekend. I had customers lined up, families, kids, and all of them watched you laugh while you did it." Her voice cracked, but not out of fear, out of exhaustion. The sheriff's son opened his mouth to argue, but Judy's hand shot up. "Not a word." The room fell silent. "Continue," Judy said, this time her tone softer. The complainant nodded, gripping the edges of the podium as though anchoring herself. "He came with 3 friends. They looked drunk. He said I showed disrespect when I didn't give him a discount he demanded. He told me, 'My dad runs things around here. You'll do what I say.' Then She paused, blinking back tears. "He kicked the sign, over and over. And when I tried to call the sheriff's office, he said no one would come." The entire courtroom shifted. Even the cameras seemed to lean in. Judge Judy inhaled slowly. "Is that true?" The boy shook his head aggressively. "No, this is blown out of proportion. I wasn't drunk, my friends were joking around. She blew it up for attention." But his words slid across the floor like spilled oil, slick, oily, unconvincing. Judy arched an eyebrow. "If this was a joke, why does the footage show you laughing while you destroy her property?" The sheriff's son blinked. "What footage?" The complainant lifted a USB drive with shaking fingers. "From the camera above my door. It caught everything." The color drained from his face one shade at a time. Judy gestured to the bailiff. "Let's see it." The bailiff approached, boots echoing through the room as he collected the evidence. The sheriff's son shifted in his seat, shoulders tightening, jaw clamping down. For the first time, the bravado slipped enough to reveal something underneath. Fear. The courtroom lights dimmed slightly as the monitor flickered on. The bailiff inserted the drive. A frozen frame filled the screen. The defendant mid-kick, face twisted in drunken triumph, friends cheering behind him. The sheriff's son exhaled so sharply it almost sounded like a gasp. Judge Judy folded her hands, eyes locked on him. "Don't look away," she said as the video prepared to play. "You're about to watch exactly who you are." The screen brightened, and the footage began. The moment the screen brightened, the courtroom transformed. Faces leaned forward, breath slowed, and even the bailiff's posture sharpened. Because truth, when caught on camera, is its own kind of fire. The footage began with a shaky nighttime view of the complainant's storefront, the glow from street lamps casting long shadows across the pavement. For a full second, nothing moved. Then, like a spark hitting dry brush, the sheriff's son burst into frame, cocky swagger unmistakable even in grainy pixels. He kicked the sign once, twice, then again, harder, each hit punctuated by laughter from the friends who stumbled behind him. In the courtroom, the sheriff's son clasped his hands so tightly his knuckles blanched. His jaw kept ticking, a nervous tell he couldn't hide. Judge Judy didn't take her eyes off the screen. The cameras caught everything. The boy's drunken smile as he glanced up at the storefront camera, flipping it off with casual arrogance. The moment he grabbed the signpost and shook it like he meant to uproot the business itself. The instant one of his friends shouted, "No one's gonna stop him. His dad owns this town." The sheriff's son flinched at that line. So did half the audience. The complainant's breath shuddered. Seeing the destruction replayed in front of her, seeing it validated, made her knees soften. The bailiff stepped subtly closer, just in case she needed support. Judy's voice sliced through the tension. "Pause it." The frame froze on the sheriff's son mid-laugh, one foot lifted for another kick. His face, smug, emboldened, gleefully reckless, filled the oversized monitor. Judy turned her chair slightly, but her gaze was a scalpel honed on the boy. "This," she said, tapping the bench once for emphasis, "is what you call a joke?" He shook his head, voice cracking before the words formed. That's not you?" Judy leaned in. "Because it looks a great deal like you, sounds like you, behaves exactly how the complainant described." I was frustrated," he shouted, panic leaking into every syllable. She disrespected me. She acted like I was nobody." "And that justified this?" Judy asked, gesturing at the frozen screen. His silence answered her. The audience murmured again, no longer just shocked, now disillusioned. Judy pressed a button. The footage resumed. The final seconds showed him turning to the camera, pointing directly at it, and declaring with full-throated arrogance, "My dad'll make sure nothing happens. Watch." The screen clicked to black. Silence. Not the kind he commanded earlier. No, this silence belonged entirely to Judge Judy. She folded her hands. "Well," she said quietly, "your father isn't here." Her eyes narrowed. "I am." A tremor ran visibly through him. Judy reached beside her, lifting a sealed envelope. "And before we go any further, an anonymous witness submitted a sworn statement this morning." Her gaze locked on him. "It contradicts everything you've said." The sealed envelope landed on the bench with a soft thud. But to the sheriff's son, it may as well have been the sound of a cell door closing. His Adam's apple bobbed once, then twice. Judge Judy let the envelope sit between them like a ticking device. The sheriff's son stared at it as though it might leap open and incriminate him on its own. "Bailiff," Judy said calmly, "please mark this for the record." He stepped forward, large hands surprisingly gentle as he lifted the envelope, examined the seal, then passed it back to Judy with a solemn nod. The audience leaned in. Even the cameras seemed to adjust their focus as if anticipating a blow. Judy didn't open it immediately. She looked at the sheriff's son first. "You know what sworn testimony means, correct?" He nodded stiffly. "Yes." "And you understand that lying in one carries legal consequences." He hesitated. Yeah, I get it. Judy tapped the envelope once. This was delivered to the clerk at 8:30 this morning. It contains a detailed description of your behavior the night of the incident, from someone who claims you threatened them if they told the truth. The boy's face hollowed. That's a lie, he blurted, voice cracking. I didn't threaten anybody. No one saw anything. I mean, no one who would talk. Judy's eyebrow rose slowly, very slowly. Oh? So there was someone who saw? His mouth snapped shut. The audience buzzed with electricity. Judy finally broke the seal. She unfolded the paper with the precision of a surgeon revealing an X-ray. Her eyes scanned the contents, expression tightening, not with anger, but with grim understanding. She began to read aloud. He said, "If you open your mouth about this, no one will believe you. My dad will make sure you regret it." A wave of whispers moved across the courtroom. The sheriff's son recoiled, shaking his head. No, that's out of context. Judy lifted the page, letting the weight of the accusation hang. Context, she repeated softly. Explain the context in which threatening someone becomes acceptable. He sputtered. I wasn't threatening. I was just, look, they misunderstood. People get scared easily. Scared of you? Judy pressed. His silence was confirmation enough. The complainant lowered her gaze, a shiver of recognition crossing her shoulders. She knew that tone, that entitlement, that implication of untouchable power. Judy set the letter down. According to this witness, you not only vandalized her business, you bragged that you would make an example of anyone who disagreed with you. That's not true, he yelled, voice shrill, teenage bravado collapsing into something almost childlike. They're lying. They're all lying. The bailiff stepped closer, just enough to remind him the room had order, even if he didn't. Judy tilted her head. Then I suppose you won't mind if I call the next witness? His breath hitched. Next. What next witness? Her gaze sharpened. The one who decided they're done protecting you. The courtroom stiffened. The door creaked. The bailiff stepped aside as a young man walked in, one of the defendant's friends from the footage, and he didn't look like he came to defend him. The door creaked open like a confession being forced into daylight. A young man stepped through, eyes low, shoulders tight, guilt dripping off him like sweat, and the sheriff's son went pale. He knew that silhouette immediately, the slouched stance, the trembling hands, the way his gaze never lifted past the floor. It was Ryan, the friend who'd cheered the loudest in the footage. What are you doing here? The sheriff's son hissed, voice a strangled whisper sharpened by panic. His foot slid back as if instinctively preparing to run. Ryan didn't answer him. Instead, he looked at Judge Judy, then at the complainant. Shame radiated from him in slow, painful waves. The bailiff guided him to the witness stand. Judge Judy offered no comfort, only clarity. State your name for the record. Ryan Keller, he murmured, voice cracking. And your relationship to the defendant? Ryan's eyes flicked toward the sheriff's son. The boy gave a subtle shake of his head. Don't you dare. Ryan swallowed hard. We're friends. We're friends, the sheriff's son snapped, trying to reassert dominance. But Ryan didn't absorb the insult. He didn't even look at him. Judge Judy continued, her tone cool and investigative. Ryan, did you witness the vandalism? Ryan closed his eyes for a beat. When he opened them, they glistened. Yes, ma'am. The audience stirred. One breath, shared across 100 people. And did the defendant make any statements about his intentions that evening? Ryan's jaw trembled. He said the shop owner needed to learn who runs things around here. He said people only respect you when you make an example out of someone. The sheriff's son bolted to his feet. You liar. You said you'd back me. You told me. Sit down, Judy commanded. The command struck like a hammer. He sat. Ryan kept going, voice steadying as the truth found courage. He told me not to talk. He said if I did, his dad would ruin my future. I believed him. I shouldn't have. Tears now threatened to surface, whether out of guilt or relief, even Ryan couldn't tell. Judge Judy nodded slowly. So the anonymous witness wasn't alone. There were others who felt intimidated. Ryan nodded. Everyone did. The sheriff's son shook his head violently, eyes wide. Ryan, don't do this. You know how this town works, you know, but the words didn't land. Ryan's spine straightened. I'm tired of being scared of you. he said quietly. The complainant pressed a hand to her mouth, the weight of the moment catching up to her. The audience murmured again, this time tinged with something new: vindication. Judge Judy leaned forward. "Ryan, is there anything else we should know?" Ryan hesitated, then his voice dropped to a whisper. "Yes. He planned to come back the next night and do worse." A cold ripple spread across the room. The sheriff's son's breath hitched, sharp, panicked. Judge Judy turned her gaze back to the defendant, eyes narrowing like a lens locking into focus. "Tell me," she said, her voice a quiet blade. "Is this who you really are?" His lips parted, but no sound came. For the first time since he kicked open the courtroom doors, the sheriff's son wasn't performing. The mask, the swagger, the smirk, the inherited confidence, all of it began to slip like wet paint melting under a hot light. The question Judge Judy posed, "Is this who you really are?" hung in the air like a trap he'd walked into without realizing it was there. The sheriff's son blinked rapidly, words clinging to his tongue like they were afraid to be spoken. The audience watched him the way you watch a toppled tower, unsure if it will stop tipping or finally collapse. I'm not," he stammered. "I'm not some monster. Ryan's just trying to make himself look good." Ryan didn't react. His silence, steady, apologetic, resolute, only tightened the air. Judge Judy leaned back slightly, studying the boy the way a surgeon studies an X-ray before making the first incision. "No one here called you a monster, but we are trying to understand the choices you made." Her voice wasn't fiery. It was clinical, which somehow cut deeper. The sheriff's son's breathing quickened. He tugged at his collar, at his sleeves, at the edges of a persona that no longer fit. "People blow things out of proportion. I just wanted respect." The complainant flinched as if the very word had weight. Judy seized it instantly. "Respect isn't taken," she said. "It's earned." He opened his mouth again, desperation beginning to overshadow arrogance. "Nobody respects me unless I push back. You don't know what it's like in my house. People expect things from me because of who my father is." The room shifted. A hint of truth, flawed, selfish, but real, had slipped out. Judy caught it like a thread. "And you believe frightening people is the way to manage those expectations?" "I wasn't frightening anyone," he snapped. Too fast, too loud, too exposed. The words echoed. Even he seemed startled by them. Ryan shook his head slowly. "You frighten everyone, all the time." The sheriff's son swallowed, hard. The facade was beginning to cave in now, crumbling under the weight of public truth. His shoulders hunched in, as though he were shrinking inside his own clothes. Judy didn't push, not yet. Pressure works best when applied slowly. "Tell me something," she said, voice softening in the way a storm softens before lightning strikes. "After you destroyed her property, after you threatened witnesses, did you feel guilty?" His jaw jumped, but his eyes, those betrayed him. "No," he finally muttered. "I felt powerful." A ripple moved across the courtroom, cold and heavy. Judy nodded once. "Thank you for your honesty." He looked up sharply, unsure if it was praise or punishment. It was neither. It was exposure. Judy shifted her attention to the complainant, who stood straighter now, empowered by the unraveling she was witnessing. "You've carried this fear alone for weeks," Judy said. "You shouldn't have, and you won't anymore." The sheriff's son turned red, shame flooding in, but still he grasped at fading threads of defiance. "My dad, he's not going to let you." Judy raised a hand. Silence cut him off mid-sentence. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "I was waiting for you to bring up your father." She reached for a printed page on her bench. "Because earlier today, the sheriff sent me a message, and I think you'll want to hear what he had to say." The paper in Judge Judy's hand wasn't just a message. It was a detonator. And the sheriff's son looked like someone who suddenly realized he'd been standing on top of the explosion the entire time. Judge Judy held the printed email delicately, as though it were a piece of evidence pulled from a crime scene. And in a way, it was. The sheriff's son watched her fingers skim the page, dread slowly tightening around his throat like an invisible rope. "Let me read the beginning," she said. Her voice was gentle, too gentle, the kind of tone that made every muscle in the boy's body stiffen. Judy glanced down. Judge, thank you for allowing this message to be entered into the record. I want to clarify that my son's actions do not represent me, my office, or my values. The sheriff's son blinked hard. No, that couldn't be right. His father always protected him, always. Judy continued, I have told him countless times that my badge is not his shield. A low murmur rippled through the audience. The boy's breath hitched, shoulders rising as he tried to swallow a panic he couldn't hide. Judy leaned forward. Your father wants it understood that you do not speak for him, or for the sheriff's department, at all. The boy shook his head, jaw trembling. He must not have meant. Oh, he meant it, Judy said, holding up the page. Very clearly. She scanned further down the letter. I fully support any ruling the court decides. My son must face accountability the same as any other citizen. The courtroom went utterly silent. Even Ryan, still on the witness stand, sat frozen. The boy looked as though the world had tilted beneath him, his face drained of color, his lips parted soundlessly. The father he bragged about, the badge he hid behind, had just been stripped away in a single paragraph. Judge Judy didn't soften the blow. Your father is not here to rescue you. He is not here to defend you. And he certainly is not here to endorse the behavior captured on that video. A thin, desperate tremor ran through the sheriff's son's voice. He must have written that because of the cameras. He doesn't actually believe. Enough, Judy said. The words struck like a gavel. She set the page down. And now, before we proceed, there is something else. The boy stilled. The audience held its breath. Judy lifted a second page, one she had kept face down until now. Your father sent another message, she said slowly. And this one, he asked me not to read unless absolutely necessary. Her eyes locked onto the sheriff's son. It is necessary. His chest rose sharply, panic flooding his features. Judy turned the page over. The boy's fingers curled into fists. This, Judy said, tapping the second letter, concerns an internal investigation into your behavior, one that began long before you stepped into my courtroom. The sheriff's son's breath shattered in his throat. The second letter lay on the bench like a forgotten landmine. And Judge Judy had just put her foot directly on it. The sheriff's son knew it too. His eyes widened, breath thinning as if the room had lost oxygen. Judy tapped the document once, the sound unnervingly soft. This internal investigation, it refers to multiple complaints filed against you over the past 2 years. The sheriff's son blinked hard. That's not possible. Those were dismissed. Dad said they were nothing. Judy arched a brow. Dismissed or ignored? The air in the courtroom tightened. She began reading. Incident 14. Use of implied authority to threaten a local bus driver. Incident 22. Verbal intimidation of a classmate at the high school. Incident 31. Property damage suspected but never formally charged. Each line hit him like a physical strike. His shoulders curled inward, jaw clenching as he tried to maintain the last scraps of composure. That's all exaggerated, he burst out. Kids mess around. People complain about stupid stuff all the time. But they complained about you, Judy replied, her voice a calm, clinical scalpel. Repeatedly, the audience murmured. Even the cameras inched closer. Ryan looked down at his lap, guilt pooling in his expression. He'd seen some of those incidents firsthand. Judy continued, unwavering. This investigation didn't begin today because of vandalism. It began because your father finally realized protecting you was no longer helping you. A flicker of betrayal crossed the boy's face. His mouth quivered like he wanted to speak, wanted to defend himself, explain himself, escape himself. But no words came. The complainant watched him, her expression shifting. Not just anger anymore, understanding. She had feared him. Now she could see him clearly. He wasn't powerful. He was unraveling. Judy leaned forward. Tell me, when did you start believing consequences were optional? When did you decide fear was easier to earn than respect? He stared at his hands, voice barely audible. People only listen if you push hard enough. Wrong, Judy said. People listen when you stand for something worth hearing. He blinked, stunned by the calmness, the precision of her words. Then Judy slid the second page aside. Now that we've addressed the past, she said, let's talk about today. The sheriff's son looked up, and in that small, fragile moment, the courtroom glimpsed the boy behind the bravado, scared, cornered, trembling under the weight of a history he could no longer outrun. Your actions didn't begin last week, Judy continued. They're part of a pattern, one that ends today. His lip trembled. Why now? He whispered. Because, Judy said, this is the first time the people you hurt refuse to stay silent. The boy's eyes snapped to Ryan. Ryan didn't look away, and that, more than anything, seemed to break him. Judy folded her hands. I have the earliest complaint here, filed years before this incident. She lifted the document. Would you like to explain it first, or shall I read it aloud? The document in Judge Judy's hand wasn't large, just a single sheet, edges slightly curled, ink faded with time. But the moment she lifted it, the sheriff's son went rigid, like someone recognizing the shape of a ghost. Judge Judy adjusted her glasses and looked at him in a way that stripped away years of bravado. This, she said, tapping the page, was filed when you were 15. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. 15. That was long before vandalism, long before threats, long before he thought he could fire a judge. He swallowed hard, his throat bobbing. I don't remember that, he muttered, though his eyes betrayed him. He remembered exactly what it was. Judy began to read. Complainant, Miss Evelyn Hart, high school English teacher. Incident, repeated verbal intimidation in class. Description, student claimed his father's position entitled him to override rules, deadlines, and disciplinary actions. Additional note, student encouraged classmates to mock or challenge teacher's authority. The courtroom shifted, the audience visibly stunned. This wasn't rebellion. This was a pattern, a blueprint for the young man sitting before them. The sheriff's son's hands curled into fists. She hated me. She was out to get me. Enough, Judy said sharply. Teachers don't file formal complaints lightly. For one to go on record means something serious happened. He shook his head rapidly. It wasn't serious. She picked on me. Ryan's voice cut through the tension. We all saw it. The sheriff's son froze. Ryan swallowed hard, guilt darkening his expression. You'd mock her every day. You told us she couldn't do anything because your dad owned the town. You scared her. A pin-drop silence fell. The complainant, today's victim, looked at the sheriff's son with new understanding, as if suddenly seeing the full lifespan of his entitlement. Judge Judy folded her hands. Your teacher wrote something else. She lifted the paper. Her voice softened, not to comfort, but because the words themselves didn't need volume to wound. If this behavior goes unchecked, he will grow into a man who believes the world owes him safety while he threatens others. The line hit the room like a gut punch. The sheriff's son's lips trembled. She didn't know anything about me. She knew enough, Judy said. The boy's shoulders slumped, tension leaking out of him in jagged breaths. For the first time, he seemed smaller than his mistakes. A young man shaped by privilege, insulated from consequence, now facing the architecture of his own past. Judy set the paper down. This wasn't just a moment of bad judgment, she said. It was the beginning of a habit, a belief that authority protects you rather than guides you. A tear slipped down the boy's cheek before he could stop it. He wiped it quickly, hoping no one saw. They saw. The whole room saw. Judy leaned in, voice low but unshakable. And the people around you, your classmates, your community, they've carried the weight of that belief for years. The boy's breathing hitched. Why is all this coming up now? Because, Judy replied. History has a way of knocking when accountability refuses to answer. A sudden knock echoed from the courtroom doors, sharp, deliberate, loaded. Every head turned as the bailiff stepped forward, opening the door. And a woman stood there, eyes swollen with dread and resolve. The woman in the doorway didn't enter. She carried herself in, as though every step had to push through years of silence. And the sheriff's son, the boy who tried to fire a judge, suddenly looked 16 again. The bailiff guided her gently into the courtroom, but she didn't need direction. Her eyes, red-rimmed, weary, trembling with a familiar kind of heartbreak, found her son instantly. He flinched as though her gaze had weight. Judge Judy watched the reunion silently. She'd seen this before. The moment arrogance meets the one person it can't perform for. The sheriff's son straightened, trying to rebuild whatever fractured dominance he still believed he had. But the moment he spoke, his voice betrayed him. "Mom, I didn't know you were coming." Her lips pressed together, the kind of press that keeps a lifetime of unsaid things from spilling out at once. She stepped closer, fingers twisting nervously around her handbag strap. "I didn't want to," she admitted softly. "But your father thought someone should be here." The boy swallowed. This was not the ally he expected. This was a mirror he didn't want to face. Judge Judy nodded once. "Ma'am, please step forward." She did, slowly, eyes never leaving her son. "State your name for the record." "Laura Montgomery," she said. Her voice was gentle but frayed, like fabric worn through at the edges. "And your relationship to the defendant?" Her throat bobbed. "I'm his mother." A tension rippled through the courtroom, soft but unmistakable. Judy folded her hands. "Mrs. Montgomery, you're aware of the testimony today?" She nodded, each movement heavy. "Yes, I watched from the hall." The sheriff's son turned sharply toward her. "Mom, don't. You don't need to say anything. This whole thing is blown up because—" But she raised a single trembling hand. He stopped. Not because he wanted to, but because he recognized the gesture. He'd grown up under it. The courtroom held its breath. Laura looked at Judge Judy. May I say something to him?" "Go ahead." She turned fully to her son, and whatever mask he'd been clinging to shattered under the weight of her expression. "You keep saying people lied about you," she whispered. "But I've heard these stories before. Teachers, neighbors, even family friends. Every time your father defended you, and every time I asked him to stop." He blinked hard, eyes glistening. "You, what? Why?" Laura inhaled shakily. "Because protecting you wasn't helping you. It was feeding something in you." His breath stuttered. "Mom, that's not fair." "It's honest," she said quietly. Judy watched them with the measured stillness of someone witnessing a truth that had taken too long to be spoken. Then Laura turned back to the judge. Her voice trembled, but her resolve didn't. "Judge, I need to tell you something." The sheriff's son stiffened. "Mom, no, don't." She pressed her hand over her mouth briefly, gathering strength, then lowered it. "I filed one of the anonymous complaints," she said, voice cracking, "and it wasn't about school or property or disrespect." Her son whispered, "Mom, please." Laura closed her eyes, a tear slipping free. "It was about what he did to me." The words hung in the air like shattered glass. "It was about what he did to me." And the entire courtroom seemed to inhale at once, as if afraid even breath might break her further. Laura's confession didn't echo. It settled, a heavy, suffocating fog that wrapped around every person in the room. Even Judge Judy's expression shifted, her eyes narrowing not in judgment, but in the kind of deep, anchoring empathy reserved for truths that cost too much to speak. The sheriff's son looked as though the floor had vanished beneath him. His mouth opened, no sound, closed again, still nothing. He had swagger for the cameras, defiance for accusations, arrogance for authority. But for this, nothing. Judy leaned forward, her voice softened by gravity rather than pity. "Mrs. Montgomery, take your time." Laura's hands trembled as she clasped them together, knuckles whitening. "I tried to get help. I wanted his father to step in, to talk to him, to make him understand that threatening me, his own mother, wasn't normal." The audience gasped softly, like a collective wince. The sheriff's son jolted. Mom, I never hurt you." "No," she whispered. "You didn't hit me. You didn't have to." Her voice wavered, but each word landed with aching precision. "You told me if I embarrassed you in front of your friends, you'd tell the town I was mentally unstable. You said Dad would believe you over me. You said I belonged to the generation that needed to stay in their lane." He crumpled, shoulders folding inward like a collapsing tent. "Mom, I was angry. I didn't mean," Judy cut in gently. "Intent doesn't erase impact." Laura nodded gratefully, tears streaking her cheeks. "I wanted him to stop. I wanted him to see what he was becoming. But every time I tried to tell his father, he said it was just teenage attitude, that he'd grow out of it. The room tightened around that phrase, grow out of it. But instead, he had grown into it. The sheriff's son's breathing became uneven, the sharp inhales of someone facing himself for the first time. "I didn't know you felt like that," he said, voice cracking. "You never said—" "I shouldn't have had to," she replied softly. Judge Judy gave the boy a moment, just long enough for the truth to anchor inside him, not long enough for him to run from it. Then she spoke with careful clarity. "Your mother didn't come here to punish you. She came because the fear you created didn't stay confined to classrooms or storefronts. It lived in your home." The boy's eyes filled. Anger gone, ego gone, armor gone. All that remained was a young man watching the consequences of his choices pull the people he cared about into the spotlight of his own destruction. Laura reached for a tissue, hands trembling. "I love you," she whispered, "but love can't keep excusing you." The sheriff's son bowed his head, tears hitting the table like soft, unsteady rain. Judge Judy turned to Laura. "Mrs. Montgomery, what outcome are you hoping for today?" The question struck the boy harder than any accusation yet. The judge's question floated in the stillness. "What outcome are you hoping for?" And Laura Montgomery's inhale trembled like someone preparing to break their own heart. Laura wiped her tears with shaking fingers, but it didn't steady her voice. Her pain wasn't loud. It was worn, quiet, exhausted. The kind you don't hear until it's been carrying weight for years. She turned to her son. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "I'm not here to watch you be punished," she whispered. "I'm here because I've run out of ways to protect you from yourself." The sheriff's son's head snapped up, eyes red, confusion and guilt tangled in the same trembling expression. "Mom, I never thought you felt scared of me. I didn't know." She exhaled a sorrowful, shaky breath. "That's exactly the problem, sweetheart. You never looked." He blinked, tears gathering despite the stubbornness clinging to his jaw. "I didn't mean those things. I was angry. I said whatever I needed to get people off my back." Laura nodded. "I know." But those words landed on people who didn't have the privilege of shrugging them off. The complainant lowered her gaze, acknowledging the weight of that truth. Ryan shifted in the witness stand, guilt and relief mixing like oil and water. Judge Judy watched Laura carefully, giving her space to speak without interference. Laura steadied herself. "All I want is for you to finally see the damage you cause before it destroys your life. The anger, the entitlement, the belief that consequences are optional, none of that came from malice. It came from never being told no." Her voice cracked. "And I'm partly to blame for that." The sheriff's son's shoulders hunched. "Don't say that. Don't take that on." "I have to," she said softly, "because I kept waiting for your father to discipline you, for him to draw lines, set boundaries, do something. But every time he dismissed your behavior, I stayed quiet. I shouldn't have." Her eyes glistened. "I let you believe you were untouchable, and now you're hurting because of it." He covered his face with one hand, sobbing quietly into his palm, the sound raw, unfamiliar, unsettling in its vulnerability. Laura stepped closer, her voice gentle, fragile. "I don't want you humiliated. I don't want you ruined. I want you to grow, to face what you've done instead of hiding behind your father's badge." She turned to Judge Judy, wiping her tears again. "I'm asking for accountability, real accountability, so he can learn from this before the world turns harder than he can bear." The judge nodded, slow, measured, with the understanding of someone who had witnessed countless families fracture under the strain of truth. The sheriff's son looked up, devastated. "Mom, what if I can't fix it?" She paused, then whispered with a trembling half-smile, "You can. But only if you stop running from the parts of yourself you don't want to see." That line shattered him, completely. Judge Judy waited until the moment settled, until the boy's sobs quieted, until the courtroom could breathe again. Then, in her controlled, composed voice, she spoke. "Thank you, Mrs. Montgomery. Now," she said, turning to the defendant, "it's time we talk about consequences." Consequences don't always arrive with sirens. Sometimes they come quietly, delivered in the steady voice of a judge who has already seen the ending you've been running from. And Judge Judy's voice had never sounded steadier. The sheriff's son sat slumped at the defendant's table, eyes swollen, cheeks streaked, breathing shallow. His body had stopped trying to project anything. No more posture, no more bravado, no more character to play. He looked like someone who had finally stopped fighting gravity. Judge Judy folded her hands, her expression neither cruel nor triumphant, just resolute. "Young man," she began, "today hasn't been about your father's badge, or your friends, or even this courtroom. Today has been about you." He flinched. Judy continued, her voice calm but unyielding. "For years, people warned you. Teachers, peers, even your own mother. You dismissed them. You hid behind privilege because it was easier than facing the truth." He wiped his nose with the back of his sleeve, shame settling into the shape of his shoulders. "Your actions have caused real harm," she said, "financial, emotional, reputational, to this business owner, to your supposed friend, to your mother, to your community." The complainant swallowed, blinking back tears, not of fear this time, but of long-awaited justice. Ryan shifted in the witness stand, eyes low, guilt heavy but lighter than before. He had done the right thing, even if late. And Laura, his mother, watched her son with a heart torn between pain and relief. For the first time, she didn't reach for him. She let the moment land. Judge Judy reached for the complainant's paperwork. "You will reimburse the full cost of the damage you caused. That includes replacement of the sign, lost business on the weekend in question, and additional restitution for intimidation." He nodded numbly. "Yes, ma'am." "You will also issue a written apology to the complainant," Judy said, "one that reflects actual remorse, not excuses." Another nod. A cracked voice. "Yes." Judy continued, "This ruling will be forwarded to the sheriff's department to be included in the existing internal investigation. I am not here to interfere with that process, but I will ensure your behavior is documented truthfully." His breath hitched again, but this time he didn't argue. "And one more thing," she said. The courtroom leaned in. "You will attend mandatory counseling, weekly, for as long as the department's behavioral specialist recommends." He stared at her, blinking, stunned, not because the order was harsh, but because it was humane. Judy softened only a fraction. "Accountability is not cruelty. It is a path. You've avoided it for a long time. Today, you take your first step." The boy's lips trembled. I understand." But Judy wasn't finished. She leaned forward slightly. "Understand this as well. If you continue down the path you were on, the world will not be gentle with you. This courtroom is the mildest version of consequence you will ever face." A shiver passed through him. He nodded again, tears falling freely. Judy raised her gavel, but paused, studying him with one last piercing question. "Before I finalize this ruling, is there anything you want to say to the people you hurt? Should accountability feel painful, or simply honest? Tell me in the comments what you believe justice means in a moment like this." The gavel hovered inches above the bench, but Judge Judy didn't strike it yet. She waited, because justice isn't just delivered, it's heard. The sheriff's son sat there, small in a way no camera could exaggerate and no courtroom could disguise. The hardness that once armored him had melted into something softer: fear, remorse, recognition. The boy who had kicked in the courtroom doors was gone. In his place sat someone new, someone unsteady, someone facing himself for the first time. Judy studied him with a gaze void of anger, void of triumph, only clarity. "You may speak," she said. The room tightened again, every pair of eyes drawn to him. The complainant, arms folded but calmer now. Ryan, fingers interlaced in the witness stand, waiting. Laura, his mother, standing with her heart in her throat. He drew a long, uneven breath. "I'm sorry." The words were small, too small for the damage he'd done, but not for the moment they entered. He swallowed, continuing, "Not because I got caught, not because I'm standing here, but because I didn't realize what I was becoming." The complainant blinked, surprise softening her features. "I hurt your business," he said, turning toward her. "I scared you. I thought respect was something I could force." His voice cracked. "I was wrong." Ryan shifted, eyes glistening as he listened. "And Ryan," he exhaled shakily, "you covered for me more times than you should have. You shouldn't have had to choose between being my friend and being a decent person." Ryan nodded, silent forgiveness settling in the space between them. Then he turned to his mother. The breath he took this time nearly broke him. "Mom, I'm sorry for every moment you were afraid of me. For every time I made you believe you couldn't reach me. You tried. You shouldn't blame yourself." Tears blurred Laura's vision. But she remained steady, stronger than she'd realized she could be. Judy absorbed his words with a quiet that held both sternness and compassion. "Thank you for saying that," she said. "But remember, apologies are seeds. They only grow if you nurture them with consistent change." He nodded, absorbing the lesson as if it were the first he'd ever truly heard. Judge Judy straightened. "Today you faced consequences you were years overdue for. But you also faced something far more difficult. Yourself." The courtroom held still as she lifted her gavel. "This ruling is final," she said, voice steady as the ground beneath them. "Restitution, counseling, written apologies, all must be completed in full." She paused, not to hesitate, but to give the moment its proper breath. "Arrogance may give you power for a moment," she continued, her voice gentling into something almost poetic. "But truth gives you a life worth living." The sheriff's son closed his eyes, letting the words settle, not as punishment, but as possibility. Judy brought down the gavel, a clean, decisive sound, justice delivered, cycle broken, a life redirected.